Today I'm ranking the 10 best aviation movies ever made, from the first film to ever win Best Picture to the only movie that put 220 real biplanes in the sky at once. This one's a light-hearted comedy set right at the dawn of aviation, when crossing the English Channel by airplane was still the wildest idea anyone could dream up. The film pulls together an international cast of characters for a massive air race, and yeah, there's plenty of national stereotypes, but it's all harmless fun. The real star, though, is the collection of replica planes. The crew actually built about 20 of them. They even used the same materials they used back in 1910, just with slightly stronger engines to keep things safe. Even with the upgrades, flying these things was still a challenge, and you really get a sense for how risky and magnificent flight actually was back then. The filmmakers even worked 2 actual vintage planes into the movie, a 1910 Deperdussin monoplane and a 1912 Blackburn Type D monoplane. So you get a little bit of real history in the middle of it all. The result is just pure entertainment and a kind of gentle tribute to those early aviation pioneers. Great cast, gorgeous scenery, and a bunch of flying machines that look ready to fall apart at any second. What's not to love? 12 O'Clock High stands out for being a World War II film that actually understands what it's talking about. Co-writer Bairn Lay Jr. lived through the real thing, and you can feel that authenticity all over the movie. Gregory Peck gives one of his best performances, leading a bomber group under insane pressure. And the movie shows what leadership and command actually look like in combat. It's not just about the planes, even though there are plenty of real B-17s on screen and loads of actual combat footage. This is more about the burden of command, the psychological toll, the tough decisions nobody wants to make. The movie skips the usual forced romance plot, which makes everything tighter and more focused. If you ever want to show someone what real leadership looks like, or just want to see a war movie that gets it right, this is the one. Honestly, it should be required viewing for anyone in charge of anything. Wings goes back even further. This is the first movie ever to win Best Picture at the Oscars. William Wellman directed, and he wasn't just some Hollywood guy. He actually flew for the Lafayette Flying Corps in World War I and later worked his way up in Hollywood from the very bottom. Thanks to his connections, the production got access to more than 220 planes. There were MB-3A Scouts, Curtiss P-1 Hawks, Martin MB-2s, even a few genuine World War I fighters on screen. It's packed with flying scenes, but being a silent film from the 20s, it's also got the era's signature goofy love triangle: Buddy Rogers' Richard Arlen and the legendary Clara Bow. Almost everyone involved was a real pilot except, of course, Bow. The chemistry works, though, and the film even puts its stars in the cockpit for real. There's a shot where Buddy Rogers is actually flying a Thomas Morse himself, which just didn't happen back then. The result is a mix of big spectacle, old-school romance, and genuine early Hollywood danger. Howard Hughes didn't care about anything except scale. With Hell's Angels, he just decided to put on the biggest aviation show the world had ever seen. The acting is pretty bad and the story forgettable. But that didn't matter, not when Hughes was filling the sky with real World War I planes. He even went so far as to retrofit a Curtiss Jenny just to make it look like an Avro 504 for those big formation shots. Most of the movie isn't even about flying, but the parts that are, those dogfights, those Zeppelin sequences, are still legendary. Hughes pulled off studio work with the Zeppelin that honestly looks better than a lot of CGI today. The big dogfight scenes didn't just set the bar for Hollywood, they've been chopped up, reused, and borrowed for decades in everything from war films to documentaries. Sometimes a movie is all about the way it looks and feels in the air. Strategic Air Command is that movie. You get these incredible aerial shots of the Convair B-36 and Boeing B-47, some of the best aviation footage ever put on film. There's a sense of scale, weight, and beauty that just nails what flight is all about. Jimmy Stewart, who really was an experienced pilot, brings this level of realism to every scene he's in. The story, written by Bairn Lay, is fine, but honestly the plot mostly exists to string together the flying sequences. You do get June Allison doing her usual long-suffering pilot's wife routine, which, yeah, is about as irritating as always. This movie's top 10 spot is earned almost entirely on the strength of its flying scenes and the dedication it shows to the real-world pilots of the Strategic Air Command. The Blue Max is another World War I movie, but this one was a big deal for a reason. It was the first time anyone really did World War I aviation in color. Just seeing any of those replica false fighters in the air was a big deal back then. The cinematography here is next level. George Pepper does his usual thing, playing it stone-faced, and Ursula Andress is there to liven things up. The story's got a great angle too, the whole aristocrats versus commoners rivalry inside a German fighter squadron. Historically, a lot of those pilots weren't even officers, so you've got this tension that feels real. Jeremy Kemp's character Willy von Klugerman can't stand Peppard, and Peppard sells that chip on his shoulder vibe perfectly. Battle of Britain is one of those movies where the effort behind the scenes actually shows up on screen. The producers went to insane lengths to gather real Hurricanes, Messerschmitts, and Spitfires. Every aviation fan knows most of those German planes actually came from the Spanish Air Force and ran on Merlin engines, but nobody cares. It's all about the spectacle, and it works. The special effects hold up for the time, and the cast is stacked. Laurence Olivier as Air Chief Marshal Dowding, Susanna York as the good-looking addition, and the plot pulls straight from The Narrow Margin, a legit book on the subject. Duxford was the main location for the ground scenes, which adds a ton of realism. They even burned down a real World War II hangar for one sequence. Way past method filmmaking, that's just commitment. Apparently, there's still a plaque at Duxford marking where the hangar once stood, a little reminder of how far they went for the film. Back in the day, the UK had a knack for turning out these straightforward, patriotic airplane films that actually put real planes on the screen. The Dam Busters and 633 Squadron are perfect examples. The Dam Busters had to work around a limited number of surviving Lancasters, so they blended in some genuine wartime footage. The thing that stands out most about it is how it takes something as complex as the physics behind the bouncing bomb and actually explains it in a way that's not just clear, but genuinely exciting. Then you've got 633 Squadron with Cliff Robertson. He fits right in, and you can see he's genuinely into flying the Mosquito. The sad bit is that they actually burned an airworthy Mosquito for the film. Even now, that's painful to think about. Anyway, both films just feel solid on a technical level, made with a kind of care you don't always see. This is one of those war movies that goes way deeper than just jets and explosions. It drops you right onto those World War II carriers, except now it's Korea and the flying is even riskier. The Navy was all in on this one. They let the filmmakers use 19 ships, so you get the real deal. Actual flight ops, that constant edge of disaster feeling, and a sense of just how dangerous these missions really were. The story follows the VF-51 Naval Aviators, the same group Neil Armstrong flew with in real life, and everything centers on the mission. Destroy the vital bridges at Toko-Ri, cut off enemy movement, and hope everyone gets back in one piece. It's all based on the James Michener novel, and it ends up being a lot more than just a war story. For its time, The Bridges at Toko-Ri was a pretty ambitious action thriller, and it's still one of the strongest tributes out there to the heroism of jet bomber pilots and the rescue teams who tried to bring them home. The High and the Mighty is classic aviation disaster movie. William Wellman directed, but what makes this one stand out is that Ernest Gann not only wrote the book, he wrote the script too, so it all comes straight from someone who actually knew what flying meant. The setup's simple. A commercial flight crossing the Pacific runs into engine trouble, the pilot loses his nerve, and everything comes down to Dan Roman, the washed-up co-pilot, to land the plane and keep everyone alive. What's actually interesting here is that John Wayne ended up starring in this almost by accident. Spencer Tracy was supposed to play Dan Roman but bailed last minute, and Wayne, who was already bankrolling the movie, had to jump in to save it from collapsing. It ended up being one of the best performances of his entire career. For decades, you couldn't even watch The High and the Mighty. All the rights got tied up after Wayne's death, and nobody saw it for years. It finally resurfaced in 2005 after a big restoration effort from the Wayne estate, with the lost reel found and everything cleaned up for home video. It's got that old-school, slightly dated acting style, but the payoff is there, and the ending still holds up even for people who know what a real emergency landing looks like. It's one of those foundational aviation films that everybody in the genre tries to match.